to drop out and Republicans to rally around a Donald Trump alternative may be the clearest sign yet of how thoroughly Donald Trump has dominated the race merely by saying controversial things. And the same may now apply to Dr. Ben Carson, who's getting headlines tonight, not for what he would do as president, but what he's saying on the campaign trail. Specifically, what he said over the weekend and reaffirmed through an aide today about the idea of a Muslim president. More on that now from our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash.
Even in today's world of politically incorrect fervor, this was explosive.
I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that.
Ben Carson said that he wouldn't want a Muslim as president in answer to a question about whether the Islamic religion is consistent with the Constitution. Then a top Carson aide doubled down.
If Dr. Carson is the voice that's willing to stand and speak for those Americans who are silent in their hearts, who don't want to speak this inconvenient truth, then let it be. Let the chips fall where they may.
The only reason Carson was discussing the Muslim religion in the first place is because of this moment at a Donald Trump town hall last week.
We have a problem in this country. It's called Muslims. We know our current president is one. Right. You know he's not even an American.
We need this
birth
question.
certificate, man. But anyway, we have training camps growing where they want to kill us. That's my question. When can we get rid of
We're
it?
going to be looking at a lot of different things. And, you know, a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are saying that bad things are happening out there. We're going to be looking at that and plenty of other things.
Trump neglected to correct the man that President Obama is a Christian, nor would the Trump campaign respond to inquiries about it the next day. An irony not even lost on the bombastic billionaire himself.
It was very interesting because I got in hot water over not saying anything. The first time it's ever happened to me.
And although Trump did say this in Iowa on Saturday,
I love the Muslims. I think they're great people.
He also pushed back on the idea that it's his job to spar with voters.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Even when his own supporters are misinformed.
I can be politically correct. Somebody said, oh, how can you say that? And I said, give me a break. It's all over the world. That's all we're talking about. You turn on the nightly news, you turn on the newscasts, no matter where you are, you have a problem. But people don't have to admit that.
Trump seized on what he said was the premise of the voter question, concern about radical Islam, not Muslim Americans in general.
What's the problem?
Well, you have radicals that are doing things. I mean, it wasn't people from Sweden that blew up the World Trade Center.
Still, when asked what he thinks about the idea of a Muslim president, Trump stirred the pot, making this not-so-subtle suggestion about President Obama.
Some people have said it already happened, frankly, but of course you wouldn't agree with that.
Dana, what if any political fallout from these comments do you expect for either Trump or Carson?
Well, when it comes to the name of the game, winning the Republican nomination, it's actually hard to see these comments not having an effect. Before coming out, I was talking to a smart Republican who sort of described Republican voters in two camps. One who like their ideology validated, and they're energized by politically incorrect remarks like we've heard from Carson and Trump. But then there are the other Republican voters who want to win the White House. And those Republicans who want to win may look at this and say this is intolerance, or as some see it, religious bigotry. And this is not going to lead us Republicans, they will say, to victory over Democrats in 2016. So it's hard to see this not kind of putting sort of a ceiling on at least Carson's support in particular, because remember, he was supposed to be the anti-Trump, the soft-spoken, smiling first-time politician, and this maybe makes people look at him in a different way.
All right, Dana, I appreciate that. Joining us now is religious scholar and best-selling author Reza Aslan. Also, CNN political commentators Amanda Carpenter and Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey's a Trump supporter who served as White House political director during the Reagan administration. Amanda is not a Trump supporter, but did serve as communications director for Senator Ted Cruz. Reza, let me start with you. As a religious scholar, as a Muslim, as an American, what is your reaction when you hear Dr. Carson saying that he wouldn't support the idea of a Muslim president?
I'm not that surprised. In fact, the only thing I'm surprised about is that the sort of Muslim bashing has taken this long to come out in the GOP field. I mean, in 2012, you know, we had Herman Cain saying that he would never have a Muslim serve on his cabinet. We had Newt Gingrich promising a constitutional amendment banning Sharia in this country. And frankly, you know, the comments of Trump and particularly Dr. Carson, I think are going to be rewarded in the GOP field. In fact,
you think their numbers
Carson
will go
campaign.
up?
the Carson campaign has already boasted that 24 hours after making that comment, they've got 100 new Facebook followers. 100,000 new Facebook followers. I think that their numbers are going to go up, and I think that as a result, you're going to see the other candidates sort of playing this game as well. The xenophobia, anti-Muslim bashing in the modern GOP today, sadly, that's how you get votes.
Amanda, what do you think about that? I mean, you're a Ted Cruz supporter.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that assessment more. I mean, look at the news of Scott Walker dropping out of the race today. His dropping out of the race is a dramatic rejection of the direction that Donald Trump and Ben Carson have taken this party, particularly with the Muslim comments and just larger no control over their message. I mean, Scott Walker, if you look at his press conference, he's essentially saying, I'm dropping out so that we can unify the anti-Trump vote. I think a lot of people are hitting the panic button now about Donald Trump and Ben Carson and essentially are rallying people to get out, figure out who the alternative is going to be, and Scott Walker was the first person to take that bait.
Jeffrey, I know you've said Dr. Carson's just flat out wrong about this, but as far as Donald Trump goes, when asked about the idea of a Muslim president, he says some people have, said it already happened. Isn't that just kind of stirring the pot?
Well, I'll tell you what's stirring the pot, Anderson. I have a column coming out tomorrow at the American Spectator in which I took a look at Reggie Love. Reggie Love was President Obama and Senator Obama's, as they called him in the trade, body man, the guy who sticks with the candidate all the way through. He served both in the campaign and in the White House with him. And he wrote a book of memoirs that came out this past January, and he recounts a personal fight between Senator Obama and Hillary Clinton, a very agitated discussion on the runway on the tarmac at Reagan Airport, in which Senator Obama accused Hillary Clinton personally of, and I'm quoting from the book directly, labeling him as a Muslim. In other words, he was accusing she and her campaign of doing this.
Even if that's true, and
we know
it came from that,
we know where this
8 years later, is it responsible to still be saying that?
Well, look, clearly, a lot of people feel this. Now, as I've said, I believe President Obama is a Christian. My problem with him is that in his past capacity as a Christian and a presidential candidate, he didn't act on Jeremiah Wright. He had the authority to get him booted from that church pulpit, and he didn't do it. And I'm sure, well, I assume it was for political reasons.
Right, but again,
because it would hurt him with the far left of the Democratic Party.
But Jeffrey, you are kind of
what? I'm sorry.
You are dodging the essential question, which is it responsible for Donald Trump 8 years after, even if Hillary Clinton introduced this idea, to still be talking about this?
I mean, this is a choice of firestorms. Why are we talking about Donald Trump and not Hillary Clinton? She's a candidate in this race. And Anderson, I have to say, we got, what, 92 million people out of the workforce? This is the kind of conversation that people like us have. Here in central Pennsylvania, people aren't interested in this kind of thing. They're trying to, get jobs, pay mortgages, do all of that sort of thing. This is the kind of conversations that's, the kind of thing that we talk about among ourselves. Well, in the media.
Reza,
and I'd add one last thing. I've said before, this is what Rush Limbaugh calls the drive-bys. We pull up, we shoot, we cause all this excitement on a topic, and then we move on to the next one. And that's what's happening here, and that's what's going to continue to happen, I imagine.
Reza, as somebody who is Muslim, I would imagine that there's a lot of Muslims who actually do care about this, and this is a big issue, just as among, some women voters, they were concerned about some things that some of the other candidates have said, just as probably some Hispanic voters were concerned as well. So, I mean, do you think it's fair to say that this is just a media invention?
It's not just Muslims who care, it's Americans who care. Actually, 66% of Americans disagree with Ben Carson and say Muslim can be president. 79% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 26 believe that to be the case. And frankly, Ben Carson, for a man who wants the job of enforcing the Constitution, doesn't understand it very well, because what he said violates Article 6 of the Constitution, which says there shall never be any kind of religious test for office. And more importantly, the inability to just simply say Trump's comments were wrong and stupid and let's move on is an indication exactly of what I said, which is that this is a winning argument. What's wrong about it? It doesn't matter if people are saying that President Obama is a Muslim. People are also saying that there are UFOs. A responsible man running for office knows the truth and would say that is not the case.
May I ask you a question? May I ask you a question? And I'm genuinely asking it. I don't know the answer. Is it true in the Muslim faith that if you were the child of a Muslim father, that you were considered by other Muslims to be a Muslim? Is that true?
A Muslim is whoever says he's a Muslim, sir.
I'm sorry?
Muslim is whoever says he's a Muslim. I'll say it again.
Asking
a Muslim?
if that is true.
I'm answering your question.
Is the child of a Muslim father
we heard your question, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey,
we heard your question. Now he's answering it. Go ahead and answer it.
Okay. Okay.
A Muslim is whoever says he's a Muslim. If someone says he's not a Muslim, he's a Christian. End of discussion.
That's not what I asked.
Amanda, it does seem.
Not what I asked.
Amanda, it does seem. I mean, you know, back not so long ago, there were people who said you couldn't have a Catholic president. And if anybody today said there shouldn't be a Jewish president, or there shouldn't be a Catholic president, or there shouldn't be a black president, or whatever it may be, people, you know, there would be large segments of the population which I would think would be very offended. Do you see it as parallel?
No, here's the thing. People are interested in matters of faith. I mean, it's funny because in politics so often we want to say it doesn't matter, don't question us, but it is important to people. And we have the Pope coming. This is a massive event in Washington, D.C. because people want to celebrate faith. So yes, we should talk about it. But when Ben Carson puts it in the formulation that he did, you know, essentially no Muslims in the White House, why couldn't he have just said, you know, I would support a Christian in the White House? Our nation is founded on Judeo-Christian values. You know, I want to see a Christian in the White House. We have Republican candidates going to Iowa so many times to convince voters that they believe in a higher power that is Jesus Christ. This happens. It's a part of the Republican primary. But to put it in this opposite formulation, it just is so negative. And just to address Jeffrey's point earlier in saying that this is some kind of media drive-by thing, I disagree. Donald Trump brought this upon himself. He was the most high-profile birther in America some years ago, and the fact that he likes to play footsie with this issue,
Amanda,
that doesn't deny what Donald Trump has said and done, and when he wants to play footsie on this issue, he could have made a joke. He brought this upon himself. He could have made a joke about it when the questioner asked him about it by saying something like, hey, you know what, I won a big campaign about that. Obama produced the birth certificate. That's over now. That's not what he did. And so now every Republican candidate has to talk about this, and we lose control over the winning messages that is jobs, economy, national security, liberty, and we don't get a chance to talk about it, and that's really unfortunate.
We got to leave it there. Amanda, I appreciate you being on. Jeffrey Lord, always. Reza Aslan, good to have you on tonight as well. Thank you. Just ahead, a new boost in the polls for Carson.